The idea of making this video came when I was studying the quantity theory of money, and all of you who have studied this theory, you would be aware of this particular, excuse me just a moment, yeah, you would be aware of this particular equation where you have studied that the output and the product of output and the price of the goods and services are equal to the money that's printed, that is the money supply, and the velocity with which it changes hands. So this, let's say, is the more liquid part of that particular equation. So I'm not going to talk about these equations in hardcore mathematics. What I'm going to talk about is something that I'm just going to dive into. So while, just bear with me for a few more moments. So while I was studying about this equation, I found that the velocity is not something that changes very often. And so is this particular factor, that is output. It doesn't change very often or doesn't change quickly. So what actually happens is that if the money supply, that is the money that is printed by the RBI or any central bank, will eventually affect the inflation or the price level in the country. What happens? What happens is that if you keep the output, if the output doesn't change, then obviously if the number of items do not change and they remain the same, the price would obviously increase if the money that is printed increases. Isn't that crystal clear? All right. So in any case, if you want that the inflation should remain contained, you got to increase your GDP. Now, as it is happening, even these days, the economy is not in such a robust condition, and that's because the GDP growth rate has come down. And the basic reasons when you have low growth rate of GDP is because we're not going to talk about the natural calamities that happen, because that's fortunately far and few in between, and hopefully they shouldn't be there at all. So what is the basic cause? The basic cause is usually less demand. Now, there is less demand in the economy when you have when not many people are employed. So what happens when there is less demand? The people who are into the manufacturing industry, they get less profits. And as they get less profits, they are able to invest even lesser because the capital formation is less. Now, this demand is doused due to global reasons, as well as there are home reasons as well. There's a lot of unpredictability. Now, people have spoken a lot about demonetization and GST, how the extra fluff was skimmed away from the economy. So that was one reason. The another reason is, of course, not just that you get your profits and you invest it into your unit, you also take loans from the financial institutions such as banks and others. So when there is less capital in the system because the financial institutions have been told to raise the interest rates for whatever reasons, so you get excess. If you are the owner of a unit, you get even lesser access to capital, which is obviously manifested through higher interest rates, and that's how the production cost increases quite a bit, and you get even lesser slice of profits. Your profit margin it shrinks even more. So less demand, of course, less capital, and then high inflation. So you just don't suffer on these two fronts. You also suffer if you are a manufacturer, of products, or you render services. So if the inflation rates are high, you raise the prices of your own products, as a result of which you lose out on customers. So high inflation means losing out on customers, and it also means higher production cost, because you would be buying uh, raw materials from some place, and if you're a renderer of services, the labor cost would increase. So this is what it is. So far I feel that most of us are on the same page, but you still don't know what am I talking about. I'm talking about how we can change the situation, because there are countries in this world that have changed the situation. Now, in addition to these reasons, there's one more, and a very important reason why the investment does not take off in our country, and that is the historical reason. When you compare India with other countries, you see that it fares very low on the entrepreneurial index. We don't have many people who come forth and invest into businesses, and you would be surprised, I was, when I found that India was at the 68th position on the global entrepreneurial index, and as far as innovation is concerned, it was on the 52nd. Now these 57, 68, 46, these things don't matter. What the bottom line is that we are quite low, we are quite far behind. So I found that there is one more. What makes a person fearless? A certain level of security gives confidence to the people. An economy is not all, it's not an interplay of inanimate forces. Because it's made up of the human behavior. A collective human behavior reflects or manifests itself as the total economy as far as the dynamics of money is concerned. So when you see there are confident people around you, what do they have in common? They feel very secure. So even if they are not struggling with the very basic fear of losing it all. Whereas we are hardwired to be more fearful, and there are a few reasons for this. There have been too many invasions in the country. So I guess I know this, you won't buy it, but it travels through DNA. We feel that we can't defend ourselves, we can't defend our boundaries. Anyone, from whoever is more aggressive, powerful, will come and decimate us. So of course this bit has to be taken care of. Too many invasions have led to breaking our confidence, and then our confidence is also low, because at least I'm talking about my generation, we've always heard that India is a developing country. It just does not develop. It's a fast emerging country, it's a developing country, it's got a developing economy, but it doesn't quite make it. I mean, it's for a long time, things haven't changed quite to a considerable extent. So it completely feeds into the confidence level of people. Why is it that we are not reaching where others have reached? Then there's too much dependence on others. Now when I say too much dependence on others, I obviously mean the our import bill is much higher than our export bills, and it has been perennially so. And that's because obviously we spend the most on oil, the petrol. We have a huge bill. So when there's too much dependence, and whenever there is a problem on the global scene, people who are too dependent on raw materials from outside, they suffer quite a bit. So believe it or not, this does affect people's mindset, that there is too much unpredictability on the economic scene. And then all right, of course, this is also quite an important thing, and we may not have realized it. In the last decade, or maybe actually for last many decades, in my experience and observation, I saw that there was a large number of people who grew up with a dream of moving outside India for grabbing a job somehow. And then why was India inducting these people? It was when this wealth just had to drain away. There's too much outflow of educated people outside. They saw it as some kind of a diamond to be had moving outside. So we just got bereft of some really good talent, and that also leaves people who are in the country with a sense of not being where they should be, because there is some place else which would compensate them better, which would provide a better lifestyle. So this is also one of an important reasons. Then every second or third year, we do hear of problems like droughts and floods, which really hits our farmers high in a bad way. And then there are suicides. People at a certain level in the economy may feel they are not affected, but it does break their confidence quite a bit to see their own country's members being so adversely affected. And so it reduces the risk capacity of people. Then the government also is, whenever you've heard that the government's public debts are continuously on the rise. So when, just take it as your father, if you or a family, when they see that their parents are constantly under debt, their own confidence takes a hit. So these are the reasons. Obviously all countries are dealing with it, but then things have to be better managed, is what I'm trying to communicate. And then obviously there's too much unpredictability on many different fronts, because even inside the country there may be too much conflict of one community with another, of one caste with another, because it's just not about community and not having some differences with the other community, but it's always, I guess it's the human nature to be in conflict with other sect, all right, another force that believes in different ideology. If one community is done away with, they'll start fighting amongst themselves for different reasons. So all these things have to be kept at bay by keeping people busy in something else. And of course, one of the biggest reasons of that destroys our risk-taking capacity is too much poverty. This is what we've grown up hearing. There's too much poverty. This is what we see when we go outside, even for a walk. We see, and that really erodes the confidence of people. So these are the reasons. These are there have been historic reasons and mismanagement of resources amongst the society. Or mismanagement in the policy making that have resulted into these reasons, these have eaten into the confidence level of people. So what is the result of all this? People in India do not have a high risk taking capacity. They feel they lose it all. So even if they are told in the budget that we'll provide you easy ways to the access to the investments, they are just not able to gather that much confidence to move forward. Then we are very low on innovation. We're very conservative. We'll do things as they have been done, most of them, and I'm definitely not trying to generalize. There are people who are path breakers, and Indians and all those people in any other developing countries who are innovative, they really deserve a salute, because it's easy to be path breaking when all of your corners are secured. It really takes a lot to gather confidence when you don't have your security backup, when you don't have a support, and still you surge ahead taking risks. So that's really salute worthy. So I guess these are the reasons why, even if there are policy announcements in order to encourage greater risk-taking capacity, or to basically boost the entrepreneurial skill in people, people still don't go ahead and create jobs. And in that case, in that situation, I see a big role of the government. When you do not have the right level of courage, you've got to make small little goals. When you have failed so many times, how do you gain back your ground? How do you step into your power? You set very small goals, and these small goals are in the form of small scale industries, medium scale industries, and that too, you can't be practical. You can't be called practical if you expect that people would generate confidence somehow when there has been a systematic erosion of it, either due to policy, which may not be wrong, but then everything has a flip side. So what I see the administration do is invite innovative projects. So there should be preference given to innovative projects, people who can think outside a certain fixed idea. Now, people define innovation in different ways, but what I'm trying to tell is that each decade, whether it was 90s, there was an obsession for electronics and new ways, new machines taking over, new gizmos, gadgets. So there was a huge obsession for it in those days. And then in 2000s, until perhaps in the first decade of 2000s, this love for trying different things, commercial consumerism, was still on. But later people realized there was a lot of health implication, there was a lot of psychological implication. So they shifted towards broadening their horizon, making perhaps doing a certain kind of a handshake with the older ways and the new ways, a fusion of health, better living, greener earth, yet retaining right kind of technology. So innovation for, I guess, the second decade of this century was about creating innovative machinery, being more effective in your health, creating perhaps a pharmaceutical setup that would be more accessible to poorer people, yet at the same time being more effective. So this is just an example. More innovation in creating greener technology, in creating food items that are healthier, having more effective and cost-effective pharmaceutical companies. So this is something that the government should invite, because there's no dearth of people who can think out of the box. They just need to have that kind of a security where they feel they would be having more latitude economically, and they can do their work, and they don't have to live under the fear that they'll be destroyed, they'll be decimated by yet another unforeseen economic force. They will not be. They should be provided that kind of a cushion. And how it can be done? Of course, inviting them, and then the government could set up the initial. They could do the groundwork, and then give your setup on lease or rent. Pretty much like most of us may not have the capital to build a house or buy a house, but we somehow work ourselves through to get a house on rent or on a lease. So maybe setting up an enterprise, and then giving it, and this can be done by the government, and then giving it on rent or lease, and then making it has been proven that the government, when they had set up a huge enterprise in form of PSUs, after a certain point, after a certain stage, usually at the maturity stage, they lost their zing. So therefore, investments should be done in small scale and medium scale industries by the government. So instead of large scale enterprise, investments by the government should be done in the small scale and medium scale, after inviting innovative people into the arena. And then if they can give these setups after a certain point on rent or lease. And of course, now this is going to be a dicey one, but I really feel that a courageous setup administration would do that. Every year when budgets are announced, please give a report card for each state about how they have performed on the infrastructure bit, how on three different sectors, on the level, how has the performance been on three different sectors, three different sectors: agriculture, manufacturing, tertiary, so that the states, it's not a hush-hush affair and people don't have to delve into their personal websites. There has to be, I guess, 15 minutes or half an hour dedicated every year when the union budgets are announced. And the states that have performed should be there should be an applause for them. They should be lauded. I guess that's pretty much it. These were the suggestions that I wanted to put it out there in the universe. If they are taken or absorbed, all that is the real benefit would be and the real happiness would lie if the country progresses. Because at the end of the day, we all citizens want to see our country progress. And our own happiness and own prosperity is secondary, even though attached, obviously, but then it is secondary. Right. Bye-bye.